I'd like to hear a little bit more about what's in your toolkit, specifically with something like emotional eating, because I know you mentioned that's something that you overcame in the past that I think a lot of
Yeah.
people deal with, right? So for people out there trying to break these bad habits, what else do you have to share?
I used to be clinically obese, and it wasn't until, and thankfully I realized this at a relatively young age, but it wasn't until I realized why I was overeating. And it's kind of a harsh truth, because I think a lot of people will tell you that they're overweight because the food industry makes delicious food, and I live in a food desert, and it's this company doing this to me, and it's agriculture, and blah, 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 blah. It's all this big business doing it to me. And if I'm really honest with you, you know why I was overweight? Because I was eating my feelings, right? When I was lonely, I would eat. When I was bored, I would eat. I would eat when I felt ashamed about how much I had just eaten. And so I was using food as an emotion regulation device, which is exactly what we do with all distractions. At the end of the day, they're pacifiers, right? We check Instagram because we don't want to deal with our day to day. We look at the news because we'd rather worry about somebody's problems thousands of miles away than think about what's happening in our own life. So the first step is recognition, is understanding that these are just emotion pacification devices. And so I think it's really important to understand that this is the root of all human motivation. There's nothing wrong with you. This is a completely normal human reaction, because it's not just fascinating to understand why we get distracted. Why do we do things against our better interest? Which, by the way, is the exact same question Plato was asking 2,500 years ago. There's a deeper question about why do we do anything and everything? What is the root of all human motivation? We used to think that it was about carrots and sticks, right? You've heard this dichotomy, carrots and sticks, that we do things for the pursuit of pleasure and the avoidance of pain. It turns out that neurologically, that is not true. That we don't believe that anymore. That if you look inside the human brain, and we can now do this through fMRI studies, and we can actually see how the brain is processing information, it turns out that the reward system is not about the pursuit of pleasure at all, at all. That in fact, everything you do is about one thing only, and that is the desire to escape discomfort. So in a
Wow.
way, the carrot is the stick. Okay, think about that for a minute. The carrot is the stick. That the way the brain gets you to do something, even if you think it's because you want to feel good, even the desire to feel good, wanting, craving, lusting, hunger, all of those things in the pursuit of feeling pleasure, the brain gets us to do by making us feel bad. So once you understand that the carrot is the stick, that there's only one reason we do anything and everything, it's to escape discomfort. That's it. There's only one reason for everything you buy, everything you click, everything you interact with. It's to escape discomfort, even wanting to feel good. Once you understand that fact, that it really is about the desire to escape discomfort, to me, it's very empowering, because it's not real. It's not objective reality. It's my subjective perception of discomfort. But if I learn these techniques to deal with discomfort in a healthier way, well, then it doesn't control me anymore. Now I can do something with that feeling, as opposed to becoming a slave to it.
Right, right. I'm curious personally, how has this realization changed your life once you realize that everything is just about escaping discomfort? And if you're able to like master that discomfort, then what? Like, do you have no more goals? Do you have no more desires? I don't know. How does that work?
No, quite the opposite, actually. I try not to be too dogmatic about something, and I don't subscribe to a particular faith per se, because I want that desire. I want that lusting. I want that dissatisfaction. What I don't want is to escape it. I think a lot of
Okay.
dogmas will tell you to almost like disassociate from that desire, that that's the ultimate nirvana, is to not want anymore. And I think that's a problem, because I'll be honest with you, and this is going to ruffle some feathers. There aren't too many Buddhists who have won the Nobel Prize, right? Because when you have this philosophy of not wanting, of disconnecting, and I'm probably butchering the philosophy, so this is just a very lay person's interpretation.
Yeah. But just a person with pure peace and no desire, no need for attachment, anything.
Exactly.
Yeah. On one hand, they could be enlightened, but on the other, you're saying they're not making an impact or doing something. They're not making traction.
Exactly. So in fact, it's the desire to escape that discomfort that is the problem.
Mm.
Why do I say that? Because it's completely unnatural. If you think about our evolutionary roots, if there were, let's say that there was some genetic fluke in our ancestors, that there was ever a group of people who were blissed out, who didn't need or want anything, that they were constantly satisfied, had everything they ever wanted. They were perfectly 100% contented with everything in life. What would have happened if our ancestors would have met that tribe of people? I'll tell you exactly what would have happened. We would have killed them and eaten them. That's what
Yeah.
would have happened. Because that desire for
Mhm.
more, to do better, that itch inside of us that constantly makes us dissatisfied is what helped us create life-changing medicine. It's what helped us
Right.
overturn despots. It's what helped us get to the moon and beyond. It's about wanting more. And there's nothing wrong with wanting more. What's wrong is that we think somehow that wanting is unnatural. No, we think that somehow happiness should be our default state. That's not true. Happiness is a fleeting sensation. You're not meant to be constantly satisfied and happy. That's meant to be a fleeting sensation. Your default state should be dissatisfaction. That is how we evolved, because that's what keeps us striving to improve our lot in life. It's the fact that we try and fight that natural instinct that's the problem.
I mean, philosophically, I think there should be some sort of balance here, right? Because there are some people who are like always hungry, never satisfied. They want more, 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 but they're not happy. And then on the other end, there are the people. Yeah, yeah. I think there's a spectrum here, and it's really interesting to me.
Yeah. So my philosophy is that we should use that as a tool. That's the rocket fuel
Yeah.
within the human spirit. And if you expend too much fuel at once, you get an explosion and you get a disaster, right? And everything is burned in its wake. Whereas if you control the use of that fuel, well, that's what makes the rocket go, right? Is when you burn that fuel when it serves you to a directed aim. If you just explode over everything, that doesn't work. So the idea here is to use that instinct to serve you rather than hurt you.
Yeah, yeah. Let's talk a little bit about that then, the traction part of your book. So, what can you tell us about what is traction? How do we stay on track and with what's best for us, right? Because there's so many options, so many things we could be doing.
Absolutely. Yeah. So this is super important. So this is step 2, making time for traction. So making time for traction starts by turning your values into time. What are values? Values are attributes of the person you want to become. So
Mhm.
when you ask somebody what's their values, right? What do you value in life? They'll tell you, oh, I value my health. I value my family. I value wisdom. They tell you about all the things they value. And most people are lying because if you really want to know what someone's values are, you don't listen to what they say. You don't listen to the words coming out of their mouth. You look at 2 things. You look at how they spend their money and how they spend their time. So if you really want to know what your values are, look at how you spend your money and look at how you spend your time. And so when you look at your calendar should be a reflection of your values. Now, most people don't keep a calendar. Maybe if they're really into personal productivity, they'll keep a to-do list. Well, to-do lists are one of the worst things you could do for personal productivity. And there are many reasons why to-do lists are terrible and why time boxing, which is all about setting an implementation intention, just a fancy way of saying planning out what you're going to do and when you're going to do it. It is such a better technique because now when you base your time on your values, that is the only way to know the difference between traction and distraction. Because you can't say you got distracted unless you know what you got distracted from. Let me say that again. You can't say you got distracted unless you know what you got distracted from. So if you have nothing on your calendar, right? If you've got blank space, what exactly did you get distracted from? You didn't plan to do anything, so everything becomes a distraction. Whereas when you plan your day, when you say, hey, this is my time to take care of my health. This is my time to take care of my family. This is my time for work. This is my time for social media. When you have that time planned, now that becomes traction. Everything else is distraction. So it starts with these 3 life domains, which we can go into if it's interesting, around you, your relationships, and then your family. And then your work. And so what you're going to do is to take those 3 life domains and turn those values into time,
Yeah.
which forces you to make trade-offs. And this is one of the reasons that to-do lists are so terrible. To-do lists have no constraint. You can always add more and more and more and more and more and more things to a to-do list, right? It's endless. Whereas a time box calendar, we all have the same 24 hours in a day. So it doesn't matter if you're Jeff Bezos or Elon Musk. It doesn't matter how much money you have. All of us have the same amount of time in each and every day. And so we kind of get this backwards in society, right? When it comes to money, we're very protective. We put our money in safes. We clip coupons. We split checks with our friends when we go out to lunch. We do all these things to be very, very cheap with our money. But in fact, it should be exactly the opposite. We should be generous with our money because we can always make more, but we should be cheap with our time because time is a truly limited resource. We only have so much time on earth. And so when we do that, when we actually budget our time, when we say, here's how I want to spend my time so that I can be the kind of person I want to become, that's the only way to know the difference between traction and distraction.